When you think of Rio de Janeiro, images of Christ the Redeemer, Sugarloaf Mountain, and Copacabana Beach might come to mind. These iconic sites are often featured in postcards, but today on Fledgling Eagle, we'll show you a different side of the city, one that doesn't appear in tourist brochures. Join us as we uncover the hidden gems of Rio de Janeiro. The image of Rio, what defines it? When viewed from an international perspective, Rio de Janeiro almost feels like the perfect postcard, a city seemingly created to captivate the eyes of travelers. While it's not without its challenges, which we will discuss shortly, it's important to first understand why Rio has such a magnetic appeal. One thing is clear: Rio knows how to market itself. Over time, the city has transformed into an iconic global brand. With its breathtaking landmarks like the Christ the Redeemer statue, the imposing Sugarloaf Mountain, the world-famous beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema, and the timeless charm of the girl from Ipanema who introduced the world to the soft rhythms of bossa nova, Rio isn't just a place on the map. It's a symbol of freedom, celebration, and beauty, which draws people from all corners of the globe. Hey there, where are you from? I want to know which city you're watching our video from. Please leave a comment so we don't feel lonely. A small action like this will motivate us to make more videos. Thank you and much love to you. And let's not forget the essence of Rio's social fabric: parties. Carnival is undoubtedly the largest and most spectacular open-air festival on the planet, an event that defines the city's celebratory spirit. Each year in February, the Sambadrome becomes the stage for a dazzling parade of samba schools. The sight of elaborately decorated floats, vibrant costumes, and the infectious rhythms of samba captivate not only the locals but visitors from around the world. The celebration's colors and sounds are truly hypnotic, offering a once-in-a-lifetime experience to anyone lucky enough to witness it. But Rio isn't only about the extraordinary parties and its natural wonders. Its culinary scene is just as important. The food here is an art form. Take, for instance, feijoada, a traditional black bean stew with pork that has become a beloved staple of Brazilian cuisine. It's more than just a dish. It's a cultural ritual, often shared with friends and family over long hours. In addition, you'll find simple yet satisfying snacks such as the beloved Globo biscuit served with a chilled glass of iced mate, which can be found on the sandy shores of Copacabana and Ipanema. For those seeking a more casual experience, a bowl of hot bean soup served at a local boteco, pub, is the perfect way to immerse yourself in the everyday flavors of the city. All of these culinary delights are integral to understanding Rio's vibrant culture, and they should be on every visitor's must-try list. All right. If you're new to this channel, Fledgling Eagle warmly welcomes you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, and remember to turn on the notification bell to catch our upcoming content. Rio's relationship with music is as deep-rooted as its love for carnival. Whether it's samba, bossa nova, or funk, the city is alive with sound. The rhythmic pulse of the city invites everyone to dance, from the casual listener to the passionate dancer. It's impossible to walk through Rio's streets without hearing music in the air, and it's no exaggeration to say that Rio's atmosphere, rich with music and dance, becomes the soundtrack to your life as you experience it. But music isn't the only way Rio has captured hearts across the globe. Even Disney, the powerhouse of American animation, found inspiration in Rio's unique charm. Enter Zé Carioca, a clever, smooth-talking parrot who became a symbol of Brazil's joyful and laid-back spirit. Z's creation is a direct result of Walt Disney's 1941 visit to Brazil, where he stayed at the iconic Copacabana Palace Hotel and was inspired to craft a character that would capture the essence of Rio and its people. In 1942, Z made his debut in Saludos Amigos, where he not only served as a guide for Donald Duck through Rio, but also introduced the world to samba, the famous Rio Promenade, and cachaca, Brazil's national liquor. Z's colorful character brought the unique energy of Rio to life in a way that resonated globally. His adventures, set to the lively and rhythmic tune of Tico Tico no Fuba, became a vehicle for Rio's culture to reach audiences far beyond Brazil, solidifying its place in the hearts of many around the world. Through all of this, the music, the food, the festivals, and the iconic figures, Rio de Janeiro continues to be much more than just a tourist destination. It's a vibrant, living city where tradition and modernity blend, and where the spirit of the Carioca people, free, fun-loving, and full of life, shines through in every street, every corner, and every celebration. Luxury neighborhoods and favelas side by side. One of the most striking features of Rio de Janeiro, especially for first-time visitors, is the stark contrast between wealth and poverty. On one side, you have sleek modern buildings, upscale apartments worth millions, and picturesque streets lined with lush trees. On the other side, entire hills are covered with tightly packed houses, precariously stacked on top of one another. It may appear surreal, almost like a movie set, but this is the reality of Rio. And the most surprising part, these contrasts aren't limited to distant corners of the city. They are found side by side, often within a matter of blocks. A prime example of this contrast is the Rocinha favela, which is not only the largest favela in Rio, but also a vivid symbol of the social divide that exists within the city. Situated less than 6 kilometers from Leblon, one of Rio's most expensive neighborhoods, Rocinha offers a glaring juxtaposition. In just a few steps, you can move from a wealthy area with million-dollar apartments to the heart of Brazil's largest favela, where millions live in challenging conditions. However, the stark contrast between wealth and poverty is not unique to Rocinha. Throughout Rio de Janeiro, this divide can be seen across many of the city's neighborhoods. With over 1,000 favelas scattered throughout the city's hillsides, nearly 1.5 million people, around 22% of the Carioca population, live in these informal settlements. This means that approximately 1 in every 5 people in Rio calls a favela home. This disparity didn't happen by accident. It's rooted deeply in the city's history. And curiously, France plays a surprising role in the story. The development of Rio's favelas is tied to the complex socioeconomic and political history of the city, shaped by historical events that still influence life in Rio today. The origin of the favelas. The favelas of Rio de Janeiro didn't emerge by chance. They have deep historical roots in the city's past, particularly during a time when Rio aspired to become the Paris of the tropics. In the early 20th century, Brazil was caught up in the excitement of the newly established republic and preparing to celebrate the centenary of its independence. As the country's capital, Rio felt the pressure to impress the world, and the model it looked to for inspiration was Paris. In the mid-19th century, Paris underwent sweeping urban reforms led by Georges Eugene Haussmann under the rule of Napoleon III. These reforms turned narrow, overcrowded streets into wide boulevards, added modern buildings, and introduced a modern sewage system that has been admired ever since. However, these transformations came at a significant social cost. Thousands of people were displaced, forced out of their homes without any alternative housing options. Brazil, eager to follow in Paris's footsteps, implemented a similar strategy, but with even more drastic consequences. In 1903, Pereira Passos, the mayor of Rio at the time, backed by President Rodrigues Alves, launched an ambitious urban overhaul in the city. The goal was clear: to erase the remnants of Rio's colonial past, open wide avenues, modernize the city's infrastructure, and create an environment that would appeal to the international elite. To achieve this, however, a critical step had to be taken: clearing the city center of its existing residents. This led to the demolition of corticos, tenement houses, where poor families lived in overcrowded conditions, renting small rooms. The inhabitants of these tenements, without compensation or support, were forced to leave their homes, often overnight. With nowhere else to go, many relocated to the hills surrounding the city, and thus, the first favelas began to take shape. The emergence of these favelas was not just a consequence of poor urban planning. It was a direct result of social policies aimed at transforming the city to fit an idealized vision, one that ignored the needs of the working class and the poor. This historical moment marked the beginning of the urban landscape that still characterizes Rio de Janeiro today, where the luxury of the city center contrasts sharply with the poverty of the surrounding hills. Organized crime. If there's one thing that many associate with Rio de Janeiro, it's the constant noise. But this time we're not talking about the lively beats of samba or music filling the streets. We're referring to the unsettling sounds of gunfire, police raids, and gang conflicts, which have unfortunately become the soundtrack for those living in the favelas. This isn't a fictional portrayal or a case of sensationalist reporting. It's the harsh reality for thousands of people who call these areas home. However, few stop to ask how Rio ended up in this situation. To understand the origins of this issue, let's go back to when the favelas were first formed. In the early days, the favelas consisted of simple, humble homes built by workers who had no other place to go. But a significant shift occurred in the 1970s when drug trafficking infiltrated these communities, marking the beginning of a new chapter for Rio's favelas. The roots of this change can be traced back to a place you might not expect: the Ilha Grande prison. During Brazil's military dictatorship, political prisoners were incarcerated alongside common criminals, which may have seemed like a routine prison management decision, but it had far-reaching consequences. The political prisoners, who were often highly disciplined, organized, and strategic, imparted these skills to the criminal population. What started as a group of inmates with a shared sense of purpose soon evolved into a much larger and more organized force. The criminals who had learned discipline and hierarchy from the political prisoners began to apply these tactics in the outside world. This transformation turned what had once been small gangs into large, powerful criminal factions. These factions grew in strength, establishing control over parts of the favelas and later expanding their influence across Rio. Over time, organized crime became an integral part of life in the favelas, shaping the socio-political landscape of the city in ways that continue to have long-lasting effects. Waves of crime. When it comes to urban violence, Rio de Janeiro consistently ranks at the top of global crime statistics, and unfortunately, not for the right reasons. One of the most significant platforms for tracking safety and quality of life recently listed Rio as the fourth most dangerous city in the Americas, ranking it more dangerous than cities like Los Angeles, Bogota, Cancun, and even Medellin. For many years, Rio has been one of the most prominent symbols of violence in Latin America, with its favelas often at the epicenter of the city's security crisis. Between July 2016 and July 2017, over 3,800 shootings were documented in Rio's favelas, an average of 39 shootings each month, nearly one shooting every single day. The constant violence, often linked to gang conflicts and drug trafficking, created a grim reality for many living in these communities. And despite efforts to control the situation has only worsened in recent years. According to data from the Fogo Cruzado Institute, which monitors gunfire incidents, the violence escalated even further from January to October 2024, with 2,165 shootings recorded in Rio's metropolitan area. More than a third of these, around 795, occurred during police operations, direct confrontations between law enforcement and the powerful criminal factions that control much of the city's favelas. This continuous cycle of violence has significantly impacted daily life in Rio. Residents in these areas live in constant fear, with the sounds of gunfire often echoing through the streets, and the fear of police operations or gang clashes shaping the rhythms of everyday life. The city's inability to address these issues effectively has led to an environment of instability and uncertainty, where it's not just the criminals, but also the vulnerable residents who bear the brunt of the violence. As crime continues to surge, the hopes for peace and security seem further out of reach, leaving the city trapped in a cycle of conflict that has yet to see a resolution. Corruption, public policies, and the struggle for change. One of the most common questions that arises when discussing Rio de Janeiro's challenges is, why has it been so difficult to improve the situation in the city? The answer, while complex, often boils down to one key factor: corruption. Corruption is deeply embedded in many aspects of Rio's society, siphoning off resources that should be directed towards vital public services like education, healthcare, transportation, and housing. This web of corruption involves not only politicians and businessmen, but also members of the security forces, all of whom contribute to a system that perpetuates the status quo. It becomes a game of personal interests where, ultimately, it is the people who bear the brunt, caught in a vicious cycle of poverty, crime, and inequality. During major sporting events like the World Cup and the Olympics, there were fleeting moments where it seemed as though Rio was on the verge of transformation. Infrastructure improvements, like new transport stations and renovated facilities, gave the impression that the city was finally stepping into the future. For a brief time, it looked like real progress was being made. But without long-term policies or genuine efforts to tackle corruption, many of these advancements quickly fell by the wayside. Transport stations were left abandoned, and the sense of change seemed to evaporate as quickly as it arrived. So what exactly is Rio de Janeiro? Is it the tropical paradise seen in the postcards or a city plagued by violence and inequality? The truth is, Rio is both. It is a city of breathtaking beauty, with stunning landscapes, sunsets at Arpoador, lively samba music in the streets, and the vibrancy of its famous beaches. But it is also a city where favelas lack basic sanitation, where drug trafficking and militias control vast areas, and where corruption, fear, and violence are constant companions. If you plan to visit Rio, go and enjoy everything the city excels at: its culture, its warmth, and its natural beauty. But it's important to remember that behind the festive atmosphere and samba rhythms, there are countless people struggling every day just to access the basics of life. Rio de Janeiro is not a neatly packaged Hollywood movie with a predictable plotline. The city's story is ever-changing, filled with both hope and hardship, and its future remains uncertain, shaped by the ongoing fight for real lasting change. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Rio de Janeiro. We've shown you a side of the city beyond the postcards, highlighting both its beauty and its challenges. Stay tuned for more adventures as we continue to uncover the stories that shape the places we visit.